We're talking baseball, Bill. A guy who was honored in Cooperstown 10 or 11 years ago and who's become one of our favorite guests. Introduce him, Bill.
Let's get to it. Let's welcome the Hall of Famer, Paul Hagen, back to Philly Pressbox Radio. Paul, welcome back.
Good to be back.
Paul, great seeing you once again. Not the greatest of starts to a baseball season for the Phillies, losing 3 of their first 4 games at home before a much-needed win Tuesday night in Andrew Painter's major league debut, and then disappointing us for much of today's game, but they got some late fireworks, pulled out a 6-5 win in 10 innings. Man, they needed that. Why have so many of the Phillies' bats been so quiet so far this season, Paul?
Well, I think there's probably a couple things. There is a theory out there. I don't know if I've subscribed to it or not, but there is a theory that the players who go to the World Baseball Classic don't get the same kind of run up into the season. So the fact that Harper and Schwarber got off to a slow start and Nola didn't pitch that well, you know, that could have something to do with it. I think part of it is just, you know, we always overemphasize the first week or game or whatever. You know, there are going to be stretches like this during the year, and we just notice them more at the beginning of the year. The one thing that I found really interesting this year was the Athletic website has something they do every year called the Hope-O-Meter. And it polls fans of all the teams as to how optimistic, whether or not they're optimistic about the upcoming season. And 2 years ago in 24, the Phillies fans came in at 96.9% optimistic. That was 5th among all the teams in baseball. Last year, 84.1, which was 10th. This year, 71.3, which was 18th. And that's 18 out of 24 of teams that were over 50% optimistic. They were behind teams like the Royals, the Reds, the A's, the Pirates. So I think that part of maybe what's happening here is the lack of optimism because of probably people were disappointed about Bo Bichette and disappointed there wasn't a little more turnover, coupled with the slow start may have even magnified that a little bit more.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the offseason, Chet and I have. It seems like the running it back thing has not gone over well with Philly fans, and a slow start is definitely going to make people feel even worse about that.
Yeah, I agree, and I was also disappointed that they didn't do more to sort of change up the chemistry, but at the same time, and not defending them, because part of this is because they backed themselves into a corner, but they were in a position where they had to re-sign Schwarber. They had to re-sign Real Muto. They wanted to extend Sanchez and Luzardo. So it's not that they didn't spend money. It's that they spent it to keep the people they had. And the one guy they thought they had, he backed out on them at the last minute. So I think some of it was bad luck. Some of it was, you know, not having a better option at catching, a better option at DH, although, you know, I'm not sure if you ever have a good option for a guy who just hit 56 home runs.
Right.
But I think, you know, it's the one thing that I have heard a lot of people around the Phillies say, and it's one of the oldest cliches in baseball. Well, just look at the back of their baseball cards. You know, they'll get to where they are. I think the one point that misses is the back of their baseball cards may reflect the best seasons they've already had. And this kind of goes back to the Dave Dombrowski, whether or not Bryce Harper can go back to being an elite player again. His last really elite season was 21. This is 26. So, and I'm not saying he can't. I'm not, because there have been injuries and, you know, I'm not saying he can't be that guy again, but it's a lot harder to say when you start approaching your mid-30s that that's probable rather than possible.
Yeah, that's one of my concerns, that we're not going to see any more all-star caliber seasons out of Bryce, not elite Harper. So we'll see. I mean, he hit the home run today. He did have that one big homer in the World Baseball Classic. He's going to have his moments, but probably not enough that we, would be happy, would want to see. Let's talk about some of the positives, though. One of those, certainly, the guy who took the mound last night, his debut. He doesn't have much on the back of his baseball card yet. Andrew Painter, pretty impressive debut. What is your view of this tall, 22-year-old hard-throwing right-hander?
Well, I mean, he was the Phillies' top prospect for, I think, a couple of years before he got hurt. There's no reason why he can't be good. Now, how good he's going to be and how quickly he will get to where, the peak of his career, well, that remains to be seen. I would not think that this year will be his best year ever. I would like to think that he will be very good this year and keep getting better for at least a few years. But you never know, especially with pitchers, injuries and, the hitters are going to make adjustments to him. He'll have to show that he can make adjustments in return. But from all the scouting reports, I had never seen him pitch till yesterday. So from all reports, he looks good. He should be good. Now we just have to sit back and watch, see if it unfolds the way we think it will.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Paul, Christopher Sanchez, my goodness, how good has he gotten? But I think what some people probably don't realize is he's 29 years old. He's not a young kid, but he certainly seems to have a very high ceiling as he's gotten so much better over the last couple of years. You see that's consistent kind of what you see over history with left-handers?
Yeah, I think that, he is obviously coming off his best year ever. And to suggest that he'll finish second in the Cy Young again or even first is probably asking a lot. But I think he's starting to develop enough of a track record. Early on you say, well, okay, he's great, but can he repeat it? Can he extend it? Can he do it, with some consistency? And I think he's shown so far that he can do that. Knock on wood, barring an injury, I think he's got a chance to be really good for several more years.
Yeah, so they did extend him, as you said, and Luzardo. But one of the key guys for me this year, I think, will be Aaron Nola. Didn't have a great first start to the season. It was 42 degrees, not the best of weather on Saturday. But Aaron Nola, who struggled last year, looked pretty good, though, in the World Baseball Classic, pitching for Italy, of all teams. What is your outlook for Aaron Nola?
Well, Aaron Nola got the big contract a couple years ago in part because he was durable. He never got hurt. Well, last year he got hurt. So this is a new thing for him. I agree. I don't think he was all that impressive his first start, but again, he was at the World Baseball Classic. It's hard, I think, maybe even more for pitchers than hitters to get ready for the season. Stung by the home run again, which he has been in the past. So I think it still is a little early to pass any judgment, but certainly just if for no other reason than the fact that he will be around for several more years because he's making a lot of money to be around for this next several years. I think you're right. He's very key for them to try to achieve what they want to achieve this year.
Hey, Paul, are you as excited to see Justin Crawford as I am? I think 22 years old, just a rookie. He's going to have his downs for sure, breaking into the big leagues, but he looks like he could be the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really cool to see him get the game-winning walk-off RBI today.
Yeah.
And he made a great catch the other night. You're right. I mean, he's probably going to struggle at times, but, I think at a time when the trend in baseball seems to be to bring prospects up early, the Phillies were patient with him. I mean, I think a lot of us thought he might be up last year, and he wasn't. So, maybe that will help him maybe not have quite as many highs and lows. I don't know. But he certainly seems to be in control, not intimidated by the situation. His dad being a very good former big league player. I'm sure he was around the game a lot, so he's not going to be intimidated or overwhelmed by just the scene. So, yeah, I mean, I have very high hopes for him. And, we talked about running it back. And I think two things we're kind of overlooking is sometimes you just need a couple young players to bring a little energy. And I think Justin Crawford and Andrew Painter are two players who could do that. I was kind of hoping that Aiden Miller would have been in that mix too to start this season. That obviously went out the window when they didn't trade Alec Boehm. And then, of course, Aiden Miller had the back problems this spring, so it's probably a good thing they didn't. But, yeah, I think, one of the ways you can change the chemistry is to bring in some young guys. And I think we look back at 2006 when at the trading deadline, the Phillies traded Bobby Abreu and Real Cormier and I think Corey Lytle and some of those players. And even Pat Gillick said, well, this probably means we're a year and a half away from being competitive. And they actually got better in the second half because some of the young guys took a step forward, took a little bit more leadership roles. I think that, and I'm not being critical of these players, but, apparently Nick Castellanos wasn't really happy. So not having a happy player around has to help a little, I think. I never saw a problem with Matt Strahm, but Dave Dombrowski kind of went out of his way to take a shot at him at the end of the year and then traded him. Yeah. So, that's 4 or 5 guys right there. But the fact that the core of the lineup is basically the same, and the fact that so much of it is left-handed with Harper and Schwarber and Stott and Marsh and now Crawford, and the fact that they're hitting, I think, 151 as a team against left-handed pitching so far, when they handled left-handed pitching very well last year. I think that's another reason why people are worried and maybe overreacting a little bit to the first 6 games.
Well, following up on the Crawford stuff, who's, by the way, hitting like 440 or whatever through the 5 games that he's played, a lot of people were concerned about the outfield. Brad Marsh in left, Otto Kemp occasionally, Crawford, a rookie in center, and the new guy, Adolis Garcia, who didn't have a great 2025, but they've been among the 3 best players so far. I know it's only 6 games. Are you okay with this outfield, Paul?
Well, I think they have some options. I love the fact that they're giving Crawford a chance to be the everyday guy. Garcia, I think, was a relatively low-risk acquisition. I think it was basically a Harrison Bader contract or a Max Kepler contract. Mm-hmm. So, he has something to prove this year. And in left, they got some options. It can be Marsh, who still has not proven that he can hit left-handed pitching, even though he really has never been given a chance. I feel like every year for the past several years, Rob Thompson has said, well, this is going to be the year that Brandon Marsh gets a chance to hit left-handers. And at the end of the year, you look up and he's had 78 at-bats or whatever it is against lefties. So, but they do have Otto Kemp as an option. So, yeah, and they did have Edmundo Sosa out there a little bit this spring. So I think they can do some mixing and matching there, and I think it can be okay. The question I do have is, we always think of the Phillies as a team with the wherewithal to do something at the trading deadline if need be. The money's not going to be the issue. Going into a season where a lockout looks very likely, and where the Phillies were, other than Bo Bichette, seemingly not that anxious to add to a payroll that's already, I believe, over the luxury tax threshold or approaching it. I don't know whether they will be willing to, dig deep if there is, let's just say they have a pretty apparent need for a right-handed hitting left fielder, and somebody's out there, but he makes a lot of money. Well, John Middleton's got to decide, whether he's going to be willing to go the extra mile and pay that money.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, they flipped over a lot of the bullpen. You were mentioning Strahm earlier this last year. It's early, obviously, but what do you think of how this bullpen is laid out now, other than Duran? But you're going to throw him every day. You better be careful with that, too.
Yeah, well, they're obviously not going to do that. They have – I think they don't pitch guys, as a rule, they don't pitch guys more than 2 days in a row or more than 3 out of 4 days. So he will not pitch every day. I do think that, all the time Rob Thompson's been here until Duran came over last year, they really have been reluctant to designate a closer. And
Right.
I think it's interesting that they're doing that now, that they have their guy who, if he is available, he's going to be their guy. The rest of the bullpen, I've always felt like bullpens, those games at the carnival where you throw darts at balloons.
Yeah.
I've always felt like putting bullpens together is kind of like that, because relievers can be so in and out. They have a good year, but on years they have good years, they probably are pitched a little more than they're used to. And then maybe there's a tendency the next year they don't pitch as well. So I don't think you ever know. I think in a bullpen, you just try to amass as many good arms as you can and catch lightning in a bottle a little bit and have options for the guys who maybe don't perform up to the level you'd hope they would. So I think to me, that's always an evolving story. And Dave Dombrowski has shown a tendency, I think, to add at least 2 relievers at the trade deadline, most years. So it wouldn't shock me at all if they do that again this year.
All right, Paul, it was last week that Bill and I made our predictions for the Phillies this season. Bill said 94 wins. I said 90. I reached out to you, and you gave me your prediction. You said 90, but the Mets win the East. That's exactly what I said as well. Have you seen anything in the first week of the season that makes you change your mind about the Phillies in either direction? And can anybody beat the Dodgers?
Well, I haven't seen anything in the first week that changes my mind. But then again, if they were 0-6 or 6-0, I don't think that would change my mind, because it's 6 games. I don't think, on paper, the Phillies are as good as they were last year. That's one thing. Of course, on paper doesn't really count once the season starts. So, I think we'll see. I think they have a chance to be a better team than that. But they have increased their regular season win total each of the last few years, and bowed out of the playoffs earlier,
Right.
each of the past few years. So I am not as concerned. Excuse me. I'm not as concerned with the win total. I think they will make the playoffs. I think it will come down to how well they perform once they get there. And one wrinkle, I think, and I can't really quantify this, but I've read that the Dodgers last year sort of changed their approach to the regular season. They were less concerned with winning the division and getting the bye in the first round, and that they just wanted to make the playoffs and be as prepared for the playoffs as they could. So maybe they didn't push quite as hard. Maybe they didn't let people go quite as long, the pitchers, and to be ready in October. And as we all know, baseball is a great copycat game. And so the Dodgers winning last year, I think, probably has a lot of teams thinking, that worked for them, especially teams that have made the playoffs and not advanced the way they did. So I'm not sure, and I haven't talked to Rob Thompson or Dave Dombrowski or anybody about this, but I'm not sure that the emphasis is going to be on having the best record in the league, getting the first round bye this year quite as much as it may have been in the past, because it looks like the Dodgers may have shown a different way. And since it worked last year, it would be surprising if other teams didn't try to emulate that.
Hey, Paul, I have one more question for you, and I know Chet wants to get to talking about your books for just a minute. Can this team continue to be successful in the regular season and not in the playoffs with Rob Thompson, and Rob Thompson remain the manager? Can he actually win a World Series for this team?
I think so. I know he gets a lot of flack, and all managers get a lot of flack.
Mostly from Bill.
I'm a flacker.
Okay, and that's fine. I do think, and I certainly don't agree with everything he does, but I do think a couple things. I think, one, managers and teams don't tell us anything anymore. So after a game, if he's made a move that appears or didn't work, or appears like it's not the right move and then it didn't work, he's going to sit there and he's going to give an answer. that is primarily geared toward protecting his players. There may well be an explanation that something going on we don't know about. In the past, managers aren't going to throw anybody under the bus, but especially to the beat writers and the guys they trusted and the guys they were around every day, would give you a little wink and a nod and just kind of let you know that there might be more to that than meets the eye. I don't think that happens anymore. I think the manager is a flack catcher for the players as much as anything. I also think that managers used to make moves that they wanted to make, and now I'm not. I think it's different with every team, but I think the stats departments dictate some of these moves that we may not agree with. And the third thing I'll say is that I think that particularly with older, star-laden, highly paid rosters, it's not as easy to manage those egos as we might think it is looking at it from the outside.
For sure.
So that's a long way of saying I don't always agree with Rob Thompson, but I think given everything, I think he does a pretty good job, and I think it's a lot harder than it probably looks.
Bill, I hope you learned something from the Hall of Famer right there, okay?
Well, I respect Paul. I don't necessarily
But you don't agree.
All right, last thing, Paul. When we talked to you last year, late summer, early fall, you said you were working on a book, maybe even 2 books. What is the status? What's going on?
Okay, yes, I have 2 books coming out that are being published by Temple University Press. The first one is called Hell of a Way to Make a Living, and it's a behind-the-scenes look at baseball writing. It's not a memoir. It's akin, I don't know if anybody today remembers a book called The Boys on the Bus. It came out in 1972, but it was a behind-the-scenes look at how a presidential campaign was covered. And it's still in print, by the way. So people were interested in that. So it's a look at, what the job's really about. It's not oh, poor me, it was terrible. No, it was a great job. And I'm grateful to have done it for as long as I did. But there's more to it, I think, than people realize. It's for all the people who said to me over the years, I would trade jobs with you in a heartbeat. The second book is coming out in the spring. Oh, that's coming out around Christmas. The second book is coming out next spring, and it is tentatively titled Banking on It. It's about the Phillies' move from Veterans Stadium to Citizens Bank Park. It talks about all the politics, all the ins and outs of the move, all the obstacles that had to be overcome, and how in the end, the last 20 years of Phillies history, which I think by any measure has been the best 20 years in Phillies history, would not have been possible without going into Citizens Bank Park.
Awesome. Well, before they come out, before Christmas, we have to have you back on. We have you anyway, just because we like to talk baseball with you.
Of course.
And we'll get updated on that.
Great. Well, I would appreciate that.